Have you ever played a game that you thought you would love, but ended up feeling the opposite? Yet, despite feeling that way, you desperately don't want to? You try everything you can to change your opinion, like replaying the game to see if you were wrong, or maybe judged it too harshly, or you do some mental gymnastics to try to convince yourself you like it. But no matter what you do, you can't bring yourself to say you like it. That's my relationship with this game. So, without further ado, so you decided to play The Evil Within. God damn it! Alright, that's it. The kid gloves are off. I mean, not that they're ever on to begin with. Okay, maybe I did put them on just a little bit. Look, like I said before, I should love this game. It has all of the things I love in my survival horror games. A great selection of weapons, really satisfying weapons to use at that, a challenging gameplay loop, and the low ammo count that really makes you think every shot you take. And while all that sounds great on paper, they all get ruined by something that either doesn't work or is poorly fucking designed. It's an absolute nightmare of a game to play, and I hate the fact that I feel that way. Because I shouldn't feel that way, because this game is directed by Shinji Mikami, man. Shinji Mikami is an absolute legend in the gaming industry. He is known as the father of survival horror, having directed 3 of the most influential games not only within their genre, but across the entire gaming space as well. These games are Resident Evil, and Resident Evil 4. Oh, yeah, there was Dino Crisis 2. Don't worry, Dino Crisis. I see you. The first Resident Evil brought the survival horror genre into the limelight, a smash success on the OG PlayStation that showed what games in this genre can really do, giving us a true feeling of dread and isolation, and showing us that we can really only go up from here when it comes to voice acting.
Stop it! Don't open that door!
6 years after the release of the original Resident Evil in 1996, Mikami would actually go on to remake the original, which I think is probably the fastest we've ever had a game be remade, but it doesn't really matter because Resident Evil, or remake, is a fantastic remake. It is the superior game in every way. Mikami perfected the fixed camera perspective survival horror experience with this game, just making it the absolute definitive way to play this game. Like, seriously, you have no reason to play the PlayStation original other than for novelty purposes. So I implore you to play this game instead of the PlayStation original if you want to start playing the series from the beginning. Not only does Remake do everything better, it also adds a lot of significant new content. I mean, seriously, play this game. It is a horror masterpiece. Although, when you think of a horror masterpiece in the Resident Evil franchise, you probably think of...
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Resident Evil 4. This is the game that changed everything. Not only did it change the direction of the Resident Evil franchise for a time, but it also changed gaming as a whole as well. Resident Evil 4's third-person combat helped inspire many other third-person horror and action games. Without Resident Evil 4, we may not have gotten the Gears of War series, the Dead Space series, and many others. These games took what Resident Evil 4 did and iterated on it. This game's influence over gaming is just incredible, and before you once think this isn't all it's hyped up to be and the game is overrated, shut the fuck up. It's actually that good. I played it when I was 18, having next to no nostalgia for it, only hearing how good it was growing up, and it was fucking excellent. Mikami's magnum opus may have been a huge success, but that success came with a few caveats. Resident Evil 4 changed the course of the series in a rather controversial way by sticking to 4's action-oriented direction, giving us Resident Evil 5. This game's actually really fun, fucking fight me. And Resident Evil 6. This game's actually really... Oh, well, no, wait. This game's actually really shit. The other caveat is that Capcom really wanted Shinji Mikami to make more Resident Evil games, but he didn't want to. He didn't want to keep making games like that. He wanted to make other types of games, which eventually led to the release of the best 3 out of 10 IGN game ever made, God Hand. God Hand was actually a pretty unique and fun action game that got some pretty whack-ass critical reception. Like, seriously, what the fuck? The game, unfortunately, didn't do well, and Mikami would leave Capcom not too long after that. The want for Resident Evil or any other horror game from Shinji Mikami seemed to follow him wherever he went. Even when he was at Platinum Games, where he developed the excellent action shooter Vanquish, publishers like Sega would constantly ask him to make a horror game, a request that honestly seemed to get on his nerves. Then, when he did work on a horror game, it was a collaboration with his friend Goichi Suda, or Suda51. Shadows of the Damned, a game that was meddled with so much by Electronic Arts, Suda51 would become somewhat disillusioned with the gaming industry, eventually coming back in full force with both Travis Strikes Again, No More Heroes, and No More Heroes 3, in 2019 and 2021, which both featured a douchebag CEO antagonist named Damon Riccitello. EA's CEO at the time of Shadows of the Damned's release was John Riccitello, so yeah, I think you can tell how this project went with him. By 2010, Mikami would eventually start his own studio named Tango Gameworks, where he would eventually go on to announce that their first game would be a horror game called The Evil Within, directed by Mikami himself. To say people were excited for this game would be an understatement. The man who led Resident Evil 4, one of the greatest games and horror games of all time, directing a new horror project while no longer under the watchful eye of meddling publishers and superiors? I mean, come on, this game sounds like it's gonna be amazing. It was supposed to be amazing. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Let's take a look at Tango Gameworks' debut title, The Evil Within. I hate this game. I really do. For every positive aspect, there's like 2 or 3 things that just don't work or are total horse shit. A good example of this is the gunplay. It's good. Like I mentioned before, it's super punchy, the weapons feel really satisfying to use, and are really well balanced. But the game also has the match mechanic, something that on paper doesn't sound all that bad, but barely functions a lot of the time. The enemies in this game have a huge weakness to fire, so when they're knocked down, it's better to use a match than to waste ammo or use melee. Which is super fucking useless in this game, by the way. And while that works in this particular scenario, every other situation where it could be used, it just doesn't work half of the time. You can burn bodies in case there are enemies playing dead, but you can also lure enemies over to burnable bodies so you can light them on fire along with the body, which sounds like a great strategy. Except, guess fucking what? It barely works half the time. You will burn bodies right next to enemies, and they just won't burn up. Like, bro, look at this shit right here. Like, what the hell was that? He definitely should have burned up. The system just chooses to work when it wants to. It just doesn't make any sense. The actual animation for the matches is also fucked, because even if the animation has you dropping a lit match onto the body, if the match doesn't hit its intended target before an enemy grabs you, the match apparently just ceases to exist, and you were locked into an animation. I will get to this bitch of a boss later. Speaking of being locked into animations, why the fuck do enemies just have the ability to lock you into attack animations instead of just hitting you like normal? Most of the time, the enemies will hit you normally, but sometimes the game just kind of goes, nope, fuck you, and you get locked into an animation. No wind up for these either. They just kind of happen, just like the grab animations. I don't have an issue with the grab animation on paper, but I find it does way too much damage and is super poorly telegraphed. It really feels like it can just happen out of nowhere, which in turn makes the one-use melee weapons a fucking hazard to your health, because you never know if you'll either just get randomly locked into an attack animation or grabbed out of nowhere without any sort of wind-up animation. And in the later areas of the game, you really don't want to get grabbed because the game just becomes more and more bullshit as it goes on. Bro, how the fuck did the enemies survive that? It's honestly a shame that aspects of the combat are pretty fucking whack, because when the game finally decides to not be bullshit, it's a lot of fun popping heads, blowing enemies away with your shotgun, and using each of your crossbow bolts in fun ways. Those moments are so few and far between because the game adds a bunch of things that just ruin the fun. Remember when Resident Evil 5 came out and people complained about how the enemies wielding guns was just a step too far? Well, for whatever reason, this game also thought this was a good idea too, with nobody really complaining about it, by the way. Ah, yes, the game Resident Evil 5 should have been, despite it having very similar ideas. Yes,
Makes sense. The enemies wielding assault rifles are just such a fucking pain in the ass, man. They just ruin the flow of combat as you start clumsily taking cover and peeking your head out like you're playing a third-person shooter from the early 2000s. And by the time these enemies are introduced, a lot of them are wearing these clay masks that just make them artificially harder to kill, which force you to either waste valuable ammo from your shotgun or incredibly valuable ammo from your high-damage weapons like the Magnum just to get rid of them. Oh, and did I mention they're peppered in with regular enemies, making dealing with them an even bigger pain in the ass to deal with? The way the main character Sebastian's skill set is designed feels like it doesn't even match the design of the enemy encounters. In Resident Evil 4 and 5, you at least had the ability to take cover. I mean, sure, it was incredibly context sensitive, but it was there. Now, was I asking for a full-blown cover system in The Evil Within? No! But when the only thing we're getting is the ability to crouch and nothing else, I start to raise a lot of questions. Mainly, why? Because when I say you have the ability to crouch, I mean you have the ability to crouch and nothing else. Literally nothing else. You cannot shoot your weapon, use melee, or throw grenades while crouched. Hell, you can't even fucking heal while crouched. If you decide to use a healing syringe while crouched, Sebastian will stand up to inject himself, which can lead to just stupid fucking deaths like this one. The lack of ability to use weapons while crouched just makes certain encounters, especially the ones with ranged enemies, feel incredibly clunky and awkward, or worse, needlessly frustrating. I mean, check this stupid shit out. There is no reason for me to be stuck in here. How in the fuck can a police detective not use a weapon while crouched? But don't worry, you can still throw bottles while crouched. Wait, what? If you could throw bottles while crouched, why the fuck can't you throw grenades while crouched? Whenever moments like this happen, I always find myself returning to the same question, which always results in discovering the same answer. That question being, why? And the answer always being, because fuck you. This game just has a I don't give a fuck mentality that I just cannot get behind. I mean, look, there are stupid hard games out there that are still fun to play, but this game does difficulty in some of the worst ways, whether it be through cheap deaths or, as stated before, poor design. When I began the playthrough for this video, I discovered it doesn't give a fuck pretty early on.
You must think you're really fucking funny, don't you?
Seriously, what kind of horse shit is that? I was only following the sound of a safe room in the distance, and being as I had seen I had the ability to break windows and vault over them prior to this, I figured I could continue doing that. But the game just decided, nope. Wanna know why? Because fuck you. That's why. There's so many moments within this game that are like this, where the game just tells you to fuck off, because parts of the game just feel like the game is just fucking around, as either certain mechanics will just not function, or you were seriously hurt or killed by something that you couldn't even possibly predict. The biggest offender of this are the game's traps. Some traps are pretty simple to avoid or disable as long as you're careful, but others you're just unable to see coming. I mean, look at this hallway right here. There's an enemy hanging off of this beam. How the fuck are you supposed to know that if he falls off of it, spikes will randomly come out of the wall and instantly kill you? Actually, I've had multiple issues going down this one hallway. There was an enemy in the corner of the cell who somehow had no idea I was there and was just staring at the corner, so I just decided to sneak kill him, except, nope, the game has decided stealth is no longer an option. You must use bullets now. At the end of this hallway, there is a pathway that leads to a bunch of enemies trapped in a room. Now, the game actually gave me the option to burn the one on the ground, reaching its hands through the bar, but when I try with the match, it just disappears into thin air, and when I kick the door open, which stuns enemies that are close to it, the door just clipped through the enemy on the ground, and he instantly grabbed me and killed me due to my low health. Like, what the fuck? Why? Oh, wait. It's because fuck you. Some of the traps are just put in some of the most cheekiest fuck spots. How about this one, where this bomb was hidden around a corner that killed me just as I was going for the kill on a downed enemy that can spawn a monster that will instantly kill you. That's some nefarious shit right there. I'm not even going to bother asking the question, because I know the answer is fuck you. Speaking of being instantly killed, what the fuck doesn't instantly kill you in this game? Every boss, except for the Keeper, seems to have the ability to instantly kill you. Some of them are random. Bro, I don't even know this boss had the ability to instantly kill you until the playthrough for this video. What the fuck? These instant kills just ruin what could have been really good boss enemies. Lisa is an instant kill boss exclusively, and every encounter with her is either frustrating or broken. She just flat out didn't show up in this part when it's pretty clear she's supposed to be here. The game also thought it would be funny one time to have the sadist reappear after I killed him earlier in a really small area where he, instantly killed me because fuck me, I guess. The boss in the underground parking lot, on the other hand, oh God, the boss in the underground parking lot can suck a toe. This boss is actually a fun fight until it decides to instantly kill you in its final phase. And sometimes his charge attacks, which trigger an instant kill, can last so long you run out of stamina, which I know isn't all that much with upgrades, but that's still such horseshit, man. And then our resident big bad Ruvik. Oh boy, this man has an entire chapter dedicated to him and his ability to fucking poke you to death. Dude just appears to give you the good old cheese touch. I hate this chapter with every fiber of my being, because it perfectly encapsulates everything that is wrong with this game. Certain mechanics just choose not to work, they're instant kill traps, and the boss enemy shows up to instantly kill you. I was on this chapter way longer than I ever needed to be because of Ruvik showing up to kill you. He could show up at any time with the game cueing his arrival by putting a blue filter on the screen. Now, this chapter has a lot of hiding spots in the area, so one would assume the second that blue filter shows up, you should probably hide in one of these hiding spots. Except, fuck you for even thinking that, dumbass, because he'll just find you in these hiding spots even if you hop into one as soon as the screen turns blue. Ruvik's arrival should make me feel scared and intimidated, but half the time I survive him showing up, I feel lucky the game mechanics didn't shit themselves and get me killed. The game just has so many moments where I just die for what looks like almost no reason. I mean, look at this part right here. Why the fuck did I end up dying here? And then on my second try, I barely did anything different, and I survived. Like, what the fuck is this? Same thing here with these tripwires. I can't even tell you which one I even set off. And then when I did get through, I don't even feel like I figured out a better path through them. Honestly, when I got to the part with the killer Roombas in the kitchen full of randomly placed traps, I just mentally checked out. I couldn't even bring myself to be mad anymore. Even when the rockets I shot at the final boss would just clip through him, I wasn't even mad. Honestly, as the game went on, I found myself being more annoyed with the characters and story than I was with playing the game. You know how in Resident Evil 4, Leon is this absolute dense buffoon who says these ungodly cheesy lines, yet he's still competent at his job?
No thanks, bro.
Yeah, well, Sebastian Castellanos may be a dense motherfucker like Leon, but unlike Leon, I refuse to believe he is competent when doing his job. I only say he must be shit at his job because despite being a police detective, his sprint is fucking pathetic, and he seems to have a tendency to ask the most obvious questions at the worst times.
What is going on here?
Bro, this is like chapter 6. You should have been asking questions like this a long time ago. Either that, or Sebastian will say some dumb shit where he tries to sound smart, but only ends up making himself sound more stupid.
I knew it.
Sebastian, this is like the 20th time you looked into a mirror and ended up here. Literally anybody could have figured that out. It also doesn't help that Sebastian is as stiff as a post when it comes to personality. He's such a boring character whose backstory is so generic, the game itself doesn't even explore it. It's all done through text logs. Sebastian's character can be boiled down to a typical gruff detective with a drinking problem and a tragic past, and it doesn't go anywhere beyond that in this game. And in case you haven't noticed, the voice acting for Sebastian is not really all that great either.
Hospital. 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 Hospital!
What the fuck?
Although I don't blame his voice actor Anson Mount for this, because although he's typically a screen actor, he can voice act pretty well, with Dota Dragon's Blood being proof of that.
20 fucking years and 29 fucking souls. You think I'm not prepared for this? You can't hit a Chaos Dragon either.
Hell, even in this game, he actually gets one of the most important aspects of voice acting right: screaming.
Now what makes you say that?
Damn, dude, he's doing great here, but the problem doesn't seem to be with the actors, it's the script, and possibly the direction they were given that's the problem. Some of the dialogue these characters are given is pretty bad.
Junior Detective Kidman. Any thoughts?
Nothing yet. I'm sure we'll know everything once we get there.
I don't even get why Sebastian is asking for Kidman's opinion here. She hasn't even seen the crime scene yet. No one has. The actors were honestly not given much to work with here, and that's a shame, because one of the best voice actors of all time, Yuri Lowenthal, is in this game as Sebastian's partner, Joseph Oda, and he unfortunately doesn't contribute much to the story, except be its punching bag.
What is it? I dropped my glasses back there.
Oh, fuck off, Joseph. Julie Kidman, who seems to be played by a really bored-sounding Jennifer Carpenter, probably fares the worst here, because her character actually has the most to do during the game's story, but she's not in the game all that much, and you won't properly understand her motivations unless you play your DLC campaigns based around her. I'm not doing that, by the way. I'm not subjecting myself to this torture any longer. The only character who's actually given time to be fleshed out, and not to mention voice acted well, is the game's antagonist Ruvik, played by Jackie Earle Haley. But even then, his backstory is so comically tragic and weirdly reminiscent of Raul Menendez's backstory in Black Ops 2 that it's hard to really take it seriously. I mean, look at this scene. This guy's just so comedically evil that he ignores the fact that he's burning down a barn with a bunch of kids inside of it.
Hey, I think there's kids in there.
I didn't hear anything. What the?
And then when it comes to the game putting Ruvik into action, he either has the most agency as an antagonist or the least amount of agency I've ever seen. 1 minute, he's instantly transforming people into zombies. The next, he's turning people into zombies slowly, for some reason. Or worse, 1 minute he's chasing you all over a mansion so he can make you explode. Oh god, please don't send me back there again. The next, he's cornering you in an elevator, taunting you instead of killing you, and then just leaves.
You're mine. To do with as I please.
Like, what? Why? It just doesn't make any sense. Actually, things just happen throughout the story for really no reason. You can barely explain more than half the shit that happens in this game, with the biggest example being how you get from area to area. 1 minute, you're getting yeeted into the next corporeal dimension, or you're suddenly teleported through random environments, and now you're just here now. Welcome to hell. Look, I'm not looking for super deep story in my horror games. I'll take a story we've seen before that's told really well, like in Dead Space 2, or a completely cheesy, almost self-parody like Resident Evil 4, but Evil Within weirdly tries to have it both ways in terms of tone and ends up just falling flat. The story is just an uninspired mess, a description that sadly describes the game as a whole. The game is a total mess that lacks a lot of the creativity that Mikami's games had in the past. Although I've talked about a lot of issues I've had with the actual gameplay, my biggest problem with the game is honestly that everything just feels so uninspired. A lot of the enemies and environments in this game are designed by a lot of talented people, but whenever I look at them, they just feel so been there and done that. A lot of the enemies, and especially the bosses, look like they come from entirely different games. The boss enemy, the Sadist, is a clear homage to Dr. Salvador from Resident Evil 4, but him being an homage isn't really the problem for me, or it wouldn't be a problem if he was the only boss in the game that felt like he was taken from somewhere else. Laura's design feels so uninspired and boring, mostly because she just looks like the ghost from The Ring, with some additional body parts thrown on her here and there. The Keeper is honestly the worst offender here, because he is so clearly a ripoff of Pyramid Head from Silent Hill 2, right down to there being 2 of them near the end of the game. The Keeper being so uninspired is honestly kind of a sore spot for me too, because the Keeper is the only boss in the game I actually liked fighting, mostly because he's pretty much the only one that doesn't have an instant kill move. And the way his encounters work is actually pretty cool, being as killing him doesn't get rid of him, due to the fact that he can just respawn where a safe is present, leading to this really cool scene where he kills himself just to get inside the chamber you locked yourself into, meaning you now have to go through the process of unlocking the door while he's in the room with you. It's a small moment of inspired design that's there to remind you just how much missed potential this game has. Even the environments are uninspired, although it really doesn't take long for one to notice, being as every horror location to ever exist feels like it's being crammed into this one. Mental hospital? Never seen that before. Village full of crazy villagers? Totally not taken from another game. A spooky mansion? Oh god, not this chapter again! Even during the middle portion of the game, where the game has a lot more diverse environments, I still feel like I've seen it all before. I mean, look at this landscape here. It feels like I just walked into an area from Dark Souls 2. I think the worst offense this game commits when it comes to the lack of creativity is that its scares are kind of pathetic. Honestly, some of them are almost funny.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling pretty supremely spooked right now.
I know saying the game isn't scary kind of sounds ridiculous, being as I keep making comparisons to Resident Evil 4, but at least that game was pretty consistent with the tone it was going for. But when it wanted to ramp up for some spooks, it actually did it pretty effectively, with the infamous regenerators and whatever sound this is being pretty terrifying. The evil within tries to be scary sometimes, but it usually just falls flat on its face, usually because it's just trying too hard.
Ooh, I wonder what's gonna happen here. Is the face gonna pop out? Oh, I don't think so. Probably not.
Are you sure about that?
The game honestly feels like it's phoning it in, like Shinji Mikami just looked up horror with a capital H on Google Images and used that as inspiration, which honestly kind of checks out because before this game's release, Mikami for the longest time kept having to deal with other big-name companies approaching him to make a horror game, something that really disappointed him because that's not all he wanted to do. It almost feels like this game is a response to that constant clamoring for a Shinji Mikami horror game, like as if he just sat down one day and just went, you know what? You guys want a horror game? I'll give you a fucking horror game. And then pitched it like this.
The ghost from The Ring? Pyramid Head? What comes to mind when you think of these horror monsters? Well, they're all icons in the horror genre. Exactly. We need horror icons of our own. So, that means we must make a horror game. Well, that's a great idea. Let's get to creating some great designs. No, we don't need to design anything. You see, the designs are right here. What? This guy's a fucking genius!
The game is trying so hard to capture that Resident Evil 4 magic while also taking other ideas like upgrade trees and crafting from other mainstream games from the time, resulting in a weird hodgepodge of a game that doesn't really know what it wants to be. Honestly, I wouldn't have even had an issue with the lack of creativity if the game was fun, but it's not. I actively despise playing this game.
Look, I know I just spent the last 20 minutes or so complaining about this game, like, a lot, but I'm not trying to dissuade people from buying another game that's got Shinji Mikami's involvement. That's far from it. This studio, Tango Gameworks, is filled with a lot of talented people, and I don't want to disrespect them like that by just saying, oh, the first game was shit, don't buy it. Because, look, their heart was in the right place. They wanted to make a good horror game, and unfortunately they failed, but people are allowed to fail, and they deserve second chances. Even industry veterans, they all deserve second chances. And that's what I did, actually, with Tango Gameworks' next game, The Evil Within 2. I believe they deserved that second chance, and the game actually looked like it was improving on things I hated from the original. So I gave them that chance, and oh my god, they did it. This studio can make good games. I love The Evil Within 2, which I know sounds ridiculous because I fucking hate this game. But The Evil Within 2 was a great game, and I'm really glad I gave this studio a second chance. So, honestly, I think you should give them a second chance too if you hated the first game. So, join me next time as we take a look at The Evil Within 2.